Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Homeland Security. Passengers at John F. Kennedy Airport are allowed to exit the airport without going through customs. While we talk about the border, immigration will discuss the horrible visa program allowing hundreds of thousands to come here legally. What happens after that? Who knows? We always talk about the border and the influx of people coming in from Central America, Mexico. We never talk about the visa program where we allow people to come in like the San Bernardino shooters on a fiancé visa or an H-1B visa or a student visa or any of these visas, and then they just disintegrate into the community and no one ever pays attention anymore.
You know how much this has changed? Give me my personal experience. The only way my mother and my brother, my father had already escaped to Cuba because of his connections with the governor of New York. I told you that story, I've mentioned it on air. But in order for my mother, my brother, and I to come to the United States, we had to have 3 people of wealth or competence to sign off affidavits that they would take care of us.
And what year is this?
That was in 1939. That's the only way you could get into this country. This country was airtight at that time. This goes all the way from 1924, when there was a communist scare coming out of the end of the First War. They really cracked down real hard from 24 to 54. And the only time they started opening up again when they wanted to get the German war criminals to help us in our basic nuclear program.
And let me jump in, though. Didn't we used to bring in workers from Mexico,
Yes.
have them work the fields, and then they went back home?
Oh, absolutely.
So that worked out fine. They didn't have to be here and become citizens.
They were part-time workers, and they were here in California, grape pickers, and Cesar Chavez, that he was the nominal leader of that particular group.
So the visa program allows people to come here as an entertainer, if you have a fiancé, as a student, and we just bring hundreds of thousands of people into the country and then never follow up whether they're staying or not, or whether they've left or not.
Why don't you impose on that the idea of sanctuary cities? I mean, people not only can come in, they can find sanctuary, so you can't get rid of them.
And the people like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and Google and all these guys, they want to bring in more low-skilled, low-paid, cheap labor, which basically what it comes down to, and the Chamber of Commerce wants the same thing.
Pathetic.
And then once they get here, they sign up to be Democrats, and so then the Democrat Party wins. So at what point do we start cracking down on this visa program, and what do you say about the visa program right now? Having been an immigrant yourself.
I was a refugee. There's a big difference. I don't mean to be fussy about this. A refugee is somebody that didn't want to leave his homeland, but circumstances developed in that homeland, and he might have been...
So you should have went to Yemen.
Refugees are people that are fleeing for their life or for their safety or whatever. Immigrants are people that came over and became the backbone of America. You know, they came from Ireland, they came from Eastern Europe, they came from Central Europe, they came from Northern Europe. But these were the people that Americanized. They came because they wanted to be Americans. They didn't come in order to impose their negative or their weird beliefs that were not in concert.
Or to jump into the safety hammock.
Well, the point is, we have a wonderful record in this country going back 230 years that most of the refugees that came into this country helped build this country. And the greatest thing I wanted to be was a #1 American. I didn't want to maintain any connection with my past. And now what you've got is people who don't want that. They want to impose their negativism onto this country, and they certainly are doing a great job.
So you're still hiding in the closet your German roots and background?
Well, no, I've gone public with it, but just to let people know that I've had that experience, and it's not been a good one.
Yeah. So we talk about the border, which needs to be addressed. There's no question about that. But we have a legal process right now that's completely out of control.
We don't have any process. You call it a legal process when something is on paper, but it's not being implemented. As far as I'm concerned, it's non-existent.
And can't anyone be a refugee? Can't anyone be fleeing some kind of persecution for some reason?
Yes.
Faith, my wife doesn't like
Well,
me, or whatever the case
one
is.
thing, if you come from the Middle East, don't try to get into this country if you're a Christian.
Oh, absolutely. That's the one place where they do draw the line.
Yeah, they draw the line. They don't want any Christians in this country.
The visa program was not around when you were coming to this country.
Oh, yes.
This is a relatively newer situation.
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding? I told you that you had to have the American consul in Germany or France or Italy, wherever you were, had to sign off on you. And then over here, you had to have 3 people that were able to afford to keep you if you couldn't take care of yourself when you came here. You had a very strong visa program. The difference was it was implemented
and enforced
in a very strict way.
And now we have a whole new problem cropping up, which is Cuban refugees that are flooding into Texas. Now that we've opened up the door with Cuba, all of a sudden here comes a bunch of Cubans trying to flee the Castro brothers.
Don't mix up what's on paper and what's actually happening, because we have a government today that really either doesn't care or wants to see happen what is happening. I'm not there to make that kind of charge.
And isn't it interesting that a lot of this happens in Texas, and we talked about this off the air. The mentality here is that if we can get enough Texas to turn blue, you will never win another presidential election if you're a Republican, or at least for the foreseeable future.
I think what supports your position is the fact that Texas is the only state where the Hispanic community tends to vote Republican rather than Democrat.
Right. And it's the only state big enough to make that much of an impact on the presidential election as far as the Electoral College goes.
You know, you talk to a great pro-Texan, because I've written recently about the fact that all the great high-paid jobs that we got in the last 6 or 7 years came out of Texas in the energy business, and now it's going the other way.
And Texas has everything it could possibly need: agriculture,
That's right.
aerospace, ports. They've got everything. They've got their own military, and they're being overrun, basically.
And also a very strong pro-American attitude.
That's exactly right. So if Texas flips, you're going to see the entire Electoral College changed for, at least in my lifetime, in your lifetime.
If you add Texas to New York, Illinois, and California, you got about 40% of the electoral votes needed to elect a president.
Before you even get into the ballot box.
Exactly.